Hello, everybody. My name is Sai. Today, I have a special guest. His name is David Wells. David is an incredible astrologer, past life therapist, author, teacher, and presenter whose unique sense of the humor and personality attracts many to his work. David was born in Scotland. When he was 16 years old, he joined the Royal Navy, where he served for 9 years. The turning point in his life came in 1992, when he was hospitalized with severe pneumonia. He remembers being aware of walking down the hospital hall while knowing that his physical body was still in a bed. The lady approached David and told him to go back to bed, that this was not his time, and he had work to do. The kind of work she was talking about would become cleaner during his recovering period, with many sleepless nights. David's ability began to develop, and memories of talking to the relatives who had passed over when he was a child returned. He studied astrology to ground his abilities and searched for meaningful ways he could discover more. David found this in Qabalah, Tree of Life, attending weekly classes for over a decade. The Tree of Life is now essential to David's life. He firmly believes it is an excellent system by which to guide us in life, and he loves showing others how we too can use Qabalah to discover who we really are and take steps to become what we truly want to be. David was a columnist with Now Magazine, Metro newspaper, Fate and Fortune, the astrologer for the Scottish Daily Record, and Spirit and Destiny magazine. He is a regular Keaton speaker and workshop presenter at Mind, Body, and Spirit Festival, and corporate events in UK, USA, Japan, and Australia. He is also a competent broadcaster with radio and television experience with the BBC, ITV, and many more. It has been a long road from the catering manager to spiritual work, and along the way, David has discovered personal strengths and faced many weaknesses, or as he puts it, admitted to them. His many books by Hayhouse UK are The Complete Guide to the Developing Your Psychic Skills, Past, Present, and Future, Past Lives, Real People, Real Past Lives, Psychic Secrets, Your Astrological Moon Sign, Qabalah Made Easy, 21 Days to Understand the Qabalah, and Oracle Deck, the Tree of Life Oracle. Welcome, David Wells. Welcome, David Wells. Hello, David.
Hi, Sai. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
I really, really appreciate you are here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to start talking about how I was led to you.
Okay. My telling of it or your telling of it?
I am the one.
You're going to tell it. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
So how I was led to you was your oracle deck,
Mhm.
the Tree of Life Oracle. Ta-da! So this oracle deck was introduced by another Hayhouse author, spiritual teacher, Kyle Gray.
Mhm.
As soon as I heard the name of the oracle deck, I got so curious and purchased and pulled the cards. I was blown away with the
Fantastic.
message. Oh my God, I'm about to cry. I was blown away with the message came through this deck. And it's such a also the beautiful artwork as well.
Very much so. Roberta's done a great job. Yeah.
Then I checked your website. I reached out immediately and I got the reading from you. The reading
Perfect.
was incredible. Received the confirmation. Some got awakened deep inside of me. And so that's how I was led to your walk, and not mentions your guided meditation allowed me to connect to some deeper place that are perhaps I might say I was not aware of, very unconscious place, and some vision which was so mysterious that I was able to connect. So thank you. That's how I met you.
You're welcome. It's really interesting because we get clients who uh, they come in. I think as any teacher will tell you, if you as a teacher, if you're not open to learning from your students, it's so important that we do that. And actually, when you came to me, that was the very first, because I did a bespoke meditation, especially for you, particularly tailored for you. And that was the first time I had ever done that. And it was such a beautiful experience. It's the first time I'd done ones for, groups and subjects, things like past lives and all that, but never specifically for one client. I've done it since, of course, but it was the first time. So thank you for gifting me that.
Oh, thank you so much. I did not know. So thank you so much. That whoa, I feel so privileged. I feel so blessed. Thank you.
That's good.
So I would like to start asking a question, starting by when I introduce your bio. It's such an interesting experiences how you got here. So I'd like to dive in that I think it's called you did have near-death experience. So people might not know what's the near-death experience, but near-death experience, some short word is called NDE, and which it seemed strengthened your psychic ability, which you already had as a
Yeah.
child.
Mm.
So I'm wondering, what can you tell us about the psychic ability looked like to you as a child? Like, for example, how did you process your gift as a child? And how did it perceived by people around you?
I think when you're a child, you just take everything as is. You don't overthink it. And I think that's what I remember mostly, just who I was. It's just something that I did. And it wasn't constant. It wasn't all the time. It was in a specific place in my grandmother's house. It was more or else always in my grandmother's house. And it was a specific happening. So it was my um relations, mainly my grandfather and one of my uncles, who would communicate with me at night. So for me, it was just quite a normal thing. I think it's also, you know, I'm an old man now. I mean, I'm 64 now. But when I was a child, I think also what we didn't understand, didn't realize that I have adult ADHD. And I think there is something in that when you're a young child and you have that. And of course, we didn't fully understand it. There is all sort of vibrations and changes and shifts. I think that's why it's more prevalent now, you know, because we understand it more. And I think it was part of that whole scenario. So I was quite an unusual child anyway for my cohort, really. And for me to process it, it was just, I think it was probably harder for my family, my grandmother especially. And it's kind of when I stopped, really, because I noticed that even though I felt I was just telling my grandmother what my grandfather had said, it was clearly starting to, initially it's kind of, oh my goodness, how did he know that? I could see that. But then it becomes a little bit frightening for them, or a little bit of, not sure we want him to go down this route, or, you know. And I think I've often said that I had a very dark happening in my grandmother's house, where there was an energy that wasn't one of my relations. And because I was wide open, I was a child, I had no control over it. I went into some kind of a seizure, a fit, really. And my grandmother came to get me. She took me downstairs and sent for the doctor because she didn't know what was going on. And I ended up having a sleeping pill put inside some strawberry jam from the doctor to kind of knock me out. And to be honest with you, Si, I think something within me realized that stopped it. It kind of made it go dormant, because I realized that this wasn't clever. It wasn't where I was at that moment in time. And to be honest, whilst I always had an interest in the subjects for, well, obviously for the rest of my life, I never really did anything with it until that near-death experience that I had. So more or else I suppressed it until then, in all honesty.
So exactly how old were you when you had, as a child, that you started to having this experience at the grandmother's house?
Oh, I mean, I would be about 5 or 6. I'd be very small. I was only a little child. Yeah. Yeah.
Young, so
Yeah.
young.
Very young.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was that? I know you were born in Scotland, and then
Mhm.
some of the culture ways, but then I thought the Scotland is a very open place, more mysterious place that are people more accepting of this. Would you say that so?
Yeah, I think we have an acceptance of maybe our roots are kind of Fey, and you know, we have our Gaelic ways, and we have people with a ken, with a knowing, and things like that. I would agree with that. But when it's in your household, I think we have a folklore, and we have an energy in our stones and in our earth that is beautiful. But it's a different thing to your grandchild telling you that your deceased husband says this, you know. And I think it's a totally different thing. And my grandmother was not hugely religious. She had a faith, and maybe that was it. But she, to be honest, she never told me not to do it. She never ever, I know, not that I know of, and I don't ever remember my parents or aunts, uncles, whoever, ever saying to me anything that was discouraging. Never at all. It wasn't, oh, don't be silly, or you're making this up, or why, none of that. I never remember any of that. So it was just something that kind of stopped on its own, I think.
Wow. And with the sleeping pill, whatever the experience that you
Yeah,
had right there, maybe
yeah,
that the child like something, this is not a good things
yeah,
or something to
yeah.
stop you, make you stop. Wow.
Yeah, and also you pick up on, you then, by that time I was the first grandchild on that side of the family. Then other grandchildren come along, and then so you've got cousins to play with, and you've got school to go to, and everything else comes in and it takes over, because it's a priority then, isn't it? So I think that's what happens.
I see. So from that, and then, okay, the life goes on, and then you had that experience of the severe pneumonia got
Mhm.
shipped you in a hospital. And then, so I think that's a near-death experience you
Yeah.
had. The old lady came and it's not the time to go
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
So
that's right. That's
what
exactly
was
right.
it like to go through the NDE near-death experience, and how that NDE experience impacted to your life to present time?
Yeah, it was a very odd thing because I had I had, as you say, I had pneumonia, and I was very ill at one point. And what I remember of that experience was I kind of found myself in the corridors of the hospital. I was just wandering around, and there was an old lady who came to me and said, "Go back to your bed, son. It's not your time." Um, so I remember thinking, "What's she talking about?" And in an instant, I was back in my bed. I could feel my body. So it was almost like, wow. And I knew I hadn't been dreaming because it was so real. It was so real. But I think the experience itself, whilst, kind of like had me thinking, wow, you finally lost it. It was actually, it was a starting point for everything else, because from that point on, that's when things got really hectic, and I couldn't, everything opened up. I mean, like in a moment, I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't sleep because there was people wandering around the room. I could hear people making noises. I, I got so tired on top of the pneumonia. When I went back to my home in Portsmouth to convalesce, I was so exhausted. And yet every night there was noises off. I could feel people sitting in the bed. I could feel people getting into the bed. I had this huge sense of otherness around me, of other worlds around me. And I didn't know what to do with it. I just, and if you're uncontrolled, which I was, it's exhausting, because energetically you're just giving, or they're taking energy from you all the time. There's no protection, there's no barrier, it's just like you're being drained constantly. I was scared to go to sleep, so I didn't sleep, which that then led me to the next stage, really.
Wow. I can imagine. Like, but then you said you were the control. So you are not frightened per se, but they just more the physical exhaustion.
Yeah, yeah. There was sometimes I was frightened, especially when I remember a couple of points where I would see things and I could hear things, and temperatures would go like to freezing very quickly, and all that sort of thing. But I think there was a couple of occasions when I actually felt them touching me. I felt I was being touched, physically touched, and that was very frightening for me, very frightening. But it's all part of the awakening process, I suppose. Now I'm completely closed off at night. Like everything's up, little shutters are down. I don't, stay
You
away.
have control, like you are like
Complete control,
you can.
absolute control. Yeah.
Wow. So from that experience of the near-death experience, everything is open up. And on your bio talked about you started to learning about the astrology to ground yourself, your ability, and then you started to discover the system of Qabalah. And so I want to talk about what is Qabalah?
Oh, it's people ask me this, and I think, how can you explain this thousands and thousands of year old practice in, like, well, I don't think I have enough time left, but
Right.
it's in a nutshell, if you think of it as a map, because when you see the tree of life symbol, it looks like a map. So if you think about it, it's a map of everything, and I mean everything in the world, everything in the universe can be found on the tree. But it's an organizing system for our spiritual self, our soul self, and our personality self. It's an organization system for astrology. It's also for tarot. It has chakras. Whatever discipline that you study, you can place it, because it is everything. You can place it on the tree. So whatever discipline you study can go on the tree. And I think for me, there's all sorts of different paths that people say Kabbalah took. And there is the Christian Kabbalah, there's obviously the Jewish Kabbalah, there's the Hermetic mystical Kabbalah. So you have all this, and it's confusing, and people, what? I would say find a team, pick one of the systems that works for you. It feels right for you. Mysticism is the one that feels right to me. and stick to that, because if you start going all over the place, that's when you get confused. There is an element, I think, if I'm being honest, there's an element of confusion around the whole thing that I think is purposeful, because it's are you willing to hone in on the thing for you that brings it to life? And that's the important part for me. Your tree, however you study it, has to be alive. It has to be something you tend to, has to be something it speaks to you. It has to be something you understand in that hugely connected way, not just and there are very intellectual Kabbalists and all different strands of it who will analyze every single word, its meaning, every single the numerology of it, and they're fantastic, and I love reading it. But it's not me. I'm more a heartfelt Kabbalist. I like the tree of life to be something that is, when I teach it, I want people to feel its magic, and I strip right down to the bare necessities of it, which is still, like I've just come into the end of one run of cohort, and that's still 3 years, and that's stripping it down to the basics. When I studied it, it was 11 years, so so it's quite a lot. And well, you never stop learning it. You can't. I mean, if you say you know it, you shouldn't. You really don't. And people pick up, so I think people pick up a book on Kabbalah, and they'll pick up Regardie, or they'll pick up Fortune, all incredibly wonderful books. But if you just pick that up and read it, and you're like, what? You go right back to the basics and to the beginning, But essentially, it's a universe and a map to help you understand the world that you live in and inhabit.
At the time that the reason I was so drawn to your work was actually I was studying a Kabbalah, and also, so like people who might not know the Kabbalah is, so your Kabbalah spell Qabalah, correct?
No, Qabalah.
That's right. But then some other system is Kabbalah is starting with K.
Yeah.
Is there anything that why your work choosing to go with QA Kabbalah?
Yeah, I went with the Q mainly because it was the one that was there. It's the one that my teacher was teaching, and also I think it appeals to me more. I love a Greek myth. Love a Greek myth. I love the magic of the gods. I love astrology. I love tarot. I love Hermeticism, and and all these things are included in the K in different ways. But I just love those magical stories. I'm a storyteller, and I think you can gain so much from symbolism from those stories. So that's what appealed to me. And like I said, when I met my teacher, that's what she was teaching. And I was in Portsmouth in England. So, it's definitely, because I do the Western mystic tradition, that's where I live, it's where I live. And I know the K, and there's a Kabbalah center here in London. And K is taught a lot here in the UK, and it's still a magnificent system. Of course it is. It's a fantastic system. Very similar, just not the same, Sisters. They're sisters, not identical twins,
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's really kind of the rabbit hole. Like that's
it
why
really is.
I love it. It is a 11 years of study. That's why you said the Kabbalah made it easy. Like that, such a great book to go with, because it's really rabbit hole.
It is a rabbit hole. Absolutely. I agree. I think that's intentional. I think it's intentional so that people find either they give up. And a lot of people, you could start a run of course with 50 people, and you might end up with 12 by the end of it, because people do give up. And that's keeping it simple. Or they go and they don't know which one to turn to. That's why I say just try to hone in on one particular method that suits you, And I think also, Sai, there's a thing about what I've learned is, so I've been studying this now for about 30 years. And it wasn't until probably the last 5 or 6 years I suddenly understood that I can make it anything I want to make it. That's the point of it, But I can't do that until I've learned it. Do you know what I mean? You have to learn the medium, you have to learn everything you can about it, and then you can adapt it and make it work for you in whichever way feels right. But you have to learn it first, you know.
Like a system. You really have to learn that how the system works first.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then
It's
so
like tarot. You know, like tarot. I will die on the hill that says learn the traditional meanings of those cards. Learn the traditional meanings. And then when you've done that, go wild, go crazy, but know the system and then adapt. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, it's interesting because I had how many times? Maybe the five fingers. I did purchase the tarot deck since I was younger, but then somehow it stopped me. There was a reason that I'm not kind of like I convinced myself I'm not respecting it enough to learn this one yet. Like there was some kind of like a mysticism, but then it was a little bit darker kind of the energy was presented by people around me or the culture way, like where I come from. So I kind of like, I purchased, but then I give away without using it. But I
Right.
read the meaning.
Yeah.
So when I did, I know this majority of the cards is meaning, but not the completely. But when I did your card, the Oracle deck, it's really there's so many astrology in and tarot in. So I was able to more hone in or like put the dots together,
Yeah. Yeah.
much more like in a sense that are easier for me to understand. So my question to you is, what made you to create the combined teaching of this system, the Kabbalah, Tree of Life, and an astrology together?
The Tree of Life is astrology. I mean, it wasn't me that combined it. It was already there. Because if you think the spheres are the planets, so for the way that my system works, and some people are different. So Neptune is at the very top, Earth is at the very bottom, and you move down through all the planets. You know, you move down the tree through the planets, and all the paths that link. So the paths are if you have the spheres. If you have, let me show you. I've got this there.
Ooh, yeah.
So if you have the paths, which are these bits, so all of these spheres are planets. And if you have these, there are 22 of them, they're the major arcana of the tarot. The minors are still there because the minors go the aces, the twos, the ones, the twos, the threes, all the way down, the numbers. So every single card can be found. This is what I'm saying. It's such a great system. Every single card can be found on this tree, and every planet can be found on this tree. So actually, they were there already. All I had to do was bring the symbols out in a kind of simpler way, so that people could resonate with them more. And if you know your chart, so if you have your own astrology chart, and say you're Gemini rising, and you consistently pull the Lover's card, well, the Lover's card is Gemini, you know. So you can then go, okay, so this is affecting me in a personality way because it's on my rising sign, you know. So there's ways you can link it. The real purpose of it for me, the way I designed the cards, was it will just lead you naturally from one thing to another. So you will go, okay, I've got this major arcana. Let's say it's the Empress. That's the 14th path in the Tree of Life. And then you go, okay, the Empress is Venus.
Empress. I happen to have right here.
You happen to have it there. Beautiful card. Yeah, so the 14th path. And then you look at her, and so she's Venus. But if you look at the card itself from symbology, the card's very green. It's very nature, and she's having a baby, you know, she's expecting an idea, you know, and that path runs between the Sephira of Chokmah. The Sephira is the circle, and Bina, and that's the great mother and the great father, and the Empress is in the middle, and she's having a baby. So you can go straight to that on your own Tree of Life and think, okay, so how does this sit with me? Bina is Saturn, Chokmah is Uranus. So you could look again at the charts. Is there anything happening with the planets at the moment? Is Saturn and Chokmah having? So, and that's entirely up to you. It's up to you and whatever level of knowledge you're at. But equally, it can then help you find pathways to discovery. That was the point, really.
I actually really learned all togetherness. I studied astrology and then I studied the Kabbalah, but this deck, I learned so much. I'm still learning, of course.
Good.
And, but it really made me easier to connect the dots with it. Yes, I thought it's a brilliant. Brilliant.
But you know, that's the whole point for me. The point is to make it easy. Let's not pretend that it is super easy, because it's not. But it can be hyper difficult. It can be uber difficult, but it doesn't have to be. If you strip it back to the feels, get back into the feelings of it, and get back into the, use your brain, use your intuition, use everything together, which is what I think it does, hopefully.
That's amazing. So I can't believe that already the time is here. So
no,
well, I know it's I have one last question, but then before that last question, so how can we get the reading from you? Is there any project you're working on? How can we connect with your work? How can we find
you can go to my website, which is davidwells.co.uk, and book a reading. At the moment, I'm not really doing much. I've not been very well for a few months, so I've just taken some time out just to make sure I'm feeling better. And I'm hoping to start some in-person work soon. It will be in Scotland, of course, but it might be a long way for you, Si, to come to Scotland. But you'd always be welcome. But mainly through the cards themselves, obviously. And there's also something that I would like to mention, which I think is I just found out it's fantastic. If you're a member of Spotify, premium member of Spotify, the 21 Days to Understanding Qabalah book, which is it's literally 21 exercises. Think of it that way rather than days. That's completely free for Spotify premium members to listen to in the audiobook. So I think and also there's meditations on their Spotify, which are free as well if you're premium member. So I think that's great. I was so surprised. I love it. Love the idea of that.
That's great. So I'm going to put your information in the description below.
Fantastic.
And I don't know if this last question will be suited for you, since you are away from the human side right now, you said. So is there any message? Do you have any message for humanity, for the collectively that we are going through right now?
For everybody. I did think about this, and I think for me it's slow down. This is what I've learned. Slow down. Take a deep breath and just slow yourself down. And then always look for what is the simplest way through this. Whether that's a thing you have to do that day at school, at work, wherever what is the simplest way I can go through this? And then my final thing is be kind to each other, but more importantly, be kind to yourself with your language and your actions.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Si.
Such a beautiful, beautiful interview. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much for being here, and namaste.
Namaste. It's my pleasure. Joy to see you as ever. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.